All right, so what is happening with Scream 7? So we just found out that Roman Bridger, Sidney's half-brother, will be returning for Scream 7, who Dewey literally shot in the face in Scream 3. But really, before I could even take a breath, they dropped an absolute nuke on us and also announced that Stu Macher will be returning for Scream 7 as well. Stu Macher, of course, one of the original Ghostface in the original Scream, one of the biggest mysteries by far in the entire franchise. So, is the Scream 7 production basically just getting desperate at this point, or are we missing something? Could this be one of the best Scream sequels ever? Well, let's talk about it. What is up, everyone, and welcome to Mad Blood. And personally, for me, ever since they announced Scream 7, especially when they announced that Neve Campbell and also Kevin Williamson would be back, the writer from the original Scream, I was really excited for Scream 7, personally. All of the other stuff going on, all that madness and everything like that. Regardless of that, very hyped for this movie. After Scream 5 and Scream 6, both movies that I do enjoy to a certain extent, definitely on the back half of the franchise for me. Both those movies, to me, do have some really fun moments in them. I do enjoy Scream 6 more than Scream 5, despite kind of the mediocre reveal and the mediocre ending to Scream 6. Just still like a fun movie. Scream 5, a lot of holes. I know they were trying to usher in this new cast, kind of a new era for the Scream franchise, of course. But despite all the craziness with that production and a lot of the people like Melissa Barrera, Jenna Ortega not returning for Scream 7, me personally, like I said, still really excited for Scream 7. But of course, we got to talk about Stu Macher, Roman Bridger, and also Billy Loomis as well. So the last time we saw Stu Macher in the Scream franchise was 29 years ago when Sidney just went ahead and dropped that TV playing Halloween 1978 on his head. He got electrocuted, smoke was coming out. He didn't look like he was doing so good. And that was literally the last frame of Stu Macher we ever saw in the franchise, which of course has led to many years, 29 years basically, of speculation. Is Stu alive? The biggest question in the franchise, without a doubt, because we never really got that 100% confirmation that Stu was actually dead, right? Like some of the other Ghostface who got shot in the face, which is a trope in the franchise. But with Stu, that's not the case. So with this big announcement of Stu Macher coming back to the franchise, there's obviously a lot to talk about. And the first thing I want to talk about is really, is the Scream 7 production with this news and the other news of the other people coming back. But of course, anytime they announce things like this, legacy characters coming back left and right, it makes some people think, is the production just desperate? Are they trying to push aside some things that happened? Some of the drama that happened behind the scenes after Scream 6. And obviously, this is one of the biggest things you could possibly think of to create some buzz around the Scream franchise again. Despite some of the negativity and some of the drama that happened in the production after Scream 6, this is kind of a way to kind of move forward, create some hype, create some speculation, create some other things in the franchise. And to me, a lot of people think that, they should have just had the Stu Macher thing become a reveal in the movie, a surprise in the movie. How epic would that have been? Just how damn cool would that have been? And I totally agree with you. I get where you're coming from, but I think to me, they really didn't have a choice. Yes, would I have preferred them to have Stu Macher just as a big reveal in the movie, a surprise? Yeah, I would have preferred that. But they're filming the majority of this movie, I believe, down in Georgia. So it would be a hard thing to hide, right? I'm sure some of the fans who are hanging around the production, some of the people on set, it would have leaked, something would have happened. There's no way they could have kept this under wraps. So I think to me, this was kind of their way to get ahead of it a little bit and not have it just be leaked, because I probably would rather have it come out like this than just as kind of a lame little leak. And also, one thing to keep in mind when we keep hearing about all these legacy characters coming back, which to some people feels a little cheap, but to me, the fact that Kevin Williamson is involved in the production makes it completely different, because I think if there was some random director and a bunch of random writers involved in the production, really just a random production without a lot of ties to the original Scream stuff, I think that would be a lot different. It would feel a lot more cheap. But I think one of the key things to think about here is, from everything I've heard, from everything I can tell, Kevin Williamson has a really, really good relationship with not only Neve Campbell, but pretty much everybody from the old OG Scream movies. So that was a huge reason why Kevin Williamson in particular, I'm sure, was able to get some of these people to come back. He has that relationship with them, and they know and they trust each other that Kevin's not going to do something that's cheap, that's going to tarnish their character. They're going to probably bounce ideas off of each other and come up with some sort of an organic way to approach these characters coming back that's going to honor the characters that so many of us love from especially the original Scream. Now that we know that Stu is coming back, one of the biggest things that I've been thinking about, I'm sure you've been thinking about, is just kind of theories on what's going to happen now. How is he going to come back? How is this all going to go down? And to me, I kind of put it into two different categories, like what's most likely to happen and also what would be kind of cool. What would I like to see happen? And to me, the most likely scenario on how they're going to bring back Stu Macher in Scream 7 is they're going to incorporate somebody related to Stu. So what that will mean is we'll see Stu either in some sort of a flashback, pictures on the wall, home video type stuff, of course, which we've seen before in the franchise, or like an inspiration for the new Ghostface. This kind of a revenge story for this relative of Stu Macher, involving Stu as kind of like a little bit of their motive at least. And to me, why I mentioned those reasons as being the most likely scenarios, not necessarily the scenarios that I personally would want to see Stu Macher brought back in the movie, really comes down to the state of Hollywood right now, the state of movie making right now. We all know this. Movies and Hollywood just in general, they aren't taking a lot of swings nowadays. This isn't the 80s. This isn't the 90s where studios would give these decent budgets to these ideas that had the potential to completely flop. They're more interested in, okay, the floor needs to be a certain level. We don't want it to fall out completely and just have this movie have the potential to be a complete flop. You need to give us something here that's going to give us a baseline of, okay, we're probably going to at least give our money back because the VOD stuff, the home video stuff just isn't what it is. Of course, in the 90s and things, basically they could bank on the home video releases essentially being a second opening for the movie in the theater. They would basically make what they made in the theater back on home video releases. So the lack of revenue from home video rentals and purchases drastically changes the creative choices we see on screen. In the old days, the physical media stuff was basically a giant hedge allowing the studios to take more risks. And my reason for saying that is I think that the most likely scenario for a Stu Macher return in Scream 7 is going to be something safe, right? Like I mentioned, a little flashback, maybe an inspiration for the new killer, home videos, pictures on the wall, a variety of safe things potentially in the movie. So I think that's just something important to keep in mind as a Scream fan, you, me, etc., that the most likely scenario, in my opinion, is going to be something safe. Now, would I be happy with those safe routes in Scream 7 for Stu Macher's character? Yeah, I would be. I wouldn't be mad about that. I also think that probably makes the most sense. Now, how do I personally want Stu Macher to come back in Scream 7? I'll probably regret talking about this because it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. And I will just say right off the bat, I do think bringing back Stu Macher, just Stu Macher, he's alive. Here you go. He's back in the story. I just don't think that makes any sense at all if you're going to keep movies 2 through 6 canon, because to me, there's really no logical explanation that Stu's just been chilling in a jail cell. He's been in hiding somewhere or whatever. I don't know. That just doesn't make any sense. That seems a little bit too far out of reach for me. And I get this is Scream. There's a lot of things that happen in the Scream franchise that are completely unbelievable. But to me, I feel like that would just be way too silly to just suddenly be like, you know what? Stu's back. He's alive. Where's he been? What's been going on? However, that doesn't mean that I don't think you could incorporate Stu surviving the TV at the end of the original Scream. I do think that it would be kind of fun seeing a little flashback of Stu surviving the TV. His face is disfigured, so you wouldn't really have to worry about the deep fake kind of stuff too much. He maybe stumbles out of the house and then eventually gets gunned down. And my reason for saying that is it's kind of a little tidbit. It's kind of a little flashback, a little like fan service. But the way it could be incorporated is you have a relative of Stu, somebody maybe in high school who's friends with Sydney's kid or kids. Maybe this person had been bullied because people know that they are related to Stu Macher. And it's really just something they try to hide. They try to like stay away from because it's kind of a dark cloud hanging over their family. But maybe they're friends with one of Sydney's kids, maybe they're not. But because of some of the stuff that starts to go down, maybe people are starting to get murdered, they go, hey, like, aren't you related to Stu? Like, what's the story behind that? And they kind of push a little bit, and eventually they have like a little heart to heart. And then we find out a little bit more of what happened with Stu, what really made him go so crazy, or maybe what happened after the TV incident. Kind of like the family's inside scoop on everything, which to me would be a way to incorporate, okay, Stu did survive the TV at the end of the original Scream, but he wasn't alive through Scream 2 through 6, which, like I already mentioned, is a concept bringing Stu back. Like, hey, he's been alive this entire time. Hey, guys, I'm back. That's just an idea, in my opinion, I just think is way too far out there to make it believable, especially for people who have been fans of the franchise for 29 years, like myself. I just think that would be a little ridiculous. Would I love to see Stu Macher, Matthew Lillard back in that kind of a way? I mean, there's a part of me that would absolutely love it because he's one of the best characters ever in the franchise. We have missed him dearly. Randy, you too, man. But still, you know, it's one of those things. I just don't think it would work. But like I said, there are some ways, in my opinion, to incorporate Stu in some ways that also make sense, but also give us some fan service and really just let us see Matthew Lillard's beautiful face and that great guy back in the Scream franchise, which would be amazing. But now on to Roman Bridger. I mean, we could talk about the Matthew Lillard thing forever. I mean, but we don't want to make this video 2 hours long. But let's talk about Roman Bridger here for a second. So all signs are pointing towards that Scream 7 will continue the continuity of the previous movies, which I hope they do. That's one thing the Scream franchise does in particular. And it's one thing very unique about the Scream franchise in comparison to the big horror franchises especially. So clearly, if they do that, which I'm sure they probably will, Roman's not going to be alive. You can't be like, oh, this guy got shot in the face and now he's back in the movie. So I think to me, it's pretty obvious Roman's going to be incorporated in some sort of a flashback, some sort of a conversation when it comes to Sydney's family. We know that Sidney Prescott's going to be a huge part of this movie, really like the focal point of this movie. This movie's going to incorporate her family even more than we've ever seen before. Obviously, it was already announced that Joel McHale is going to be Sydney's husband in this movie. Patrick Dempsey, unfortunately, was not able to come back. He did some cool stuff in Thanksgiving, and it would have been great to see Patrick Dempsey back, obviously, but I'm sure it came down to money. But yeah, I don't think the Roman announcement is that big of a deal. It is exciting, definitely, but I can't think of a possibility where it's going to be anything other than kind of just a little fan service, a little flashback, just a little something when Sydney's maybe talking about her family, talking about incidents that happened before. But in just a second, I do want to talk about a crazy idea that has been floating around about the potential for an opening kill or just opening in Scream 7. But first, I want to talk about Billy for a second, who apparently, as I'm making this video, is rumored to be coming back as well, which we have already seen. Of course, we saw Billy in some of the hallucinations for Sam's character in Scream 5 and 6. Now that Sam is not going to be in Scream 7, well, up to this point, I mean, it feels like we're getting people thrown back into the movie left and right. So who knows? Maybe tomorrow Sam will be back as well, but I doubt that. But yeah, so Billy coming back in more hallucinations wouldn't make any sense because Sam, the biological daughter of Billy, is not going to be in the movie, so we're probably not going to get the hallucination stuff. So it's probably going to be similar to what we're going to see with Stu and Roman. It's going to be flashback stuff, but potentially this crazy opening idea for Scream 7, which could be finally getting to see the death of Maureen Prescott, Sydney's mom, which was something that obviously was introduced in the original Scream, has been a big part of this story throughout all of the movies, really, and is just massive. Can you imagine? So yeah, of course, I mean, especially if you're keeping Scream 3 in the story, it kind of makes Roman almost the puppet master for Billy and Stu. So yeah, you would have to incorporate Billy and Stu in that opening or in that moment, maybe whether it's maybe in another point in the movie. But one of my biggest issues with that is the deepfake technology, just the technology to kind of make somebody look younger. I thought it actually looked pretty good in the Indiana Jones movie, but like in Alien Romulus, for example, not that great. But the technology seems to work a little bit better when it's the actual person and you're kind of just making them look a little younger, as opposed to kind of putting a totally different face on a different person. But my issue is, man, if they're going to try to kind of replicate the Maureen Prescott death in either the opening or another point in the movie, they would have to do the de-aging stuff with Skeet Ulrich and Matthew Lillard and Roman as well, which, man, I'm not excited about that. I just don't think the technology is all that great. What I've seen of the technology has been kind of a letdown in most of the movies, other than kind of the Indiana Jones movie, which I've actually thought was done pretty well, and they actually extended that scene for a long time, which is kind of impressive. But still, that makes me a little bit skeptical about that idea. But how crazy would that be if Maureen Prescott was the opening kill of Scream 7? Like, holy shit. But anyways, like I said before, I'm just a huge Scream fan. I love the franchise, especially the first two movies. They just mean so much to me. So just the fact that we're getting Scream 7, especially relatively shortly after Scream 6, like, it's pretty damn cool. So I will eat it up regardless of how they use Stu Macher's character, Billy's character, Roman's character. I'm sure I'll love it and be pretty hyped about it. And honestly, I really am thinking, Scream 5 did about $140 million. Scream 6 did about 170. With everything going on with Kevin Williamson involved, some of the returning characters that people have been so hyped about for so many years, Stu Macher returning. Honestly, I'm kind of making a prediction here, but I feel like Scream 7 is going to make over $200 million and be one of the most successful movies in the franchise. And yeah, maybe I'm an old man. Maybe the youngsters would prefer to see Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega back in the movie over people like Neve Campbell and Courtney Cox. Maybe. All of them are great, but maybe I'm just out of touch when it comes to that. But to me, making Sydney back in the movie as a focal point, having Courtney Cox back, Stu Macher back, all of these characters, along with Kevin Williamson back in the movie, the writer of the original Scream, who just loves the franchise. This franchise means so much, not only to his career, but just his life in general. And yeah, sometimes when directors who made classic movies earlier in horror franchises often come back later in the franchise, and in some cases make movies that are much, much worse. It almost seems like it's a totally different person. But I am pretty confident in what Kevin Williamson can do. And I am really, really looking forward to Scream 7. So yeah, crazy news, guys. Stu Macher back, Billy probably back, Roman Bridger definitely back. It's just a crazy time to be a Scream fan. I am very hyped. But thanks so much, everybody, for watching. If you want some more Scream videos from me right now, go ahead and check out one of these next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. If you don't want to miss future videos on the channel, the best way to do that is to make sure you subscribe. But again, thanks so much for watching, everybody. I appreciate it. My name is Matt, and I will talk to you in the next one.